You are lying in bed right now, or you were last night. You put your phone down. You remember doing that much. Then nothing. The next thing you know, it is morning, and an entire chunk of your own existence has vanished without your permission. Not lost like a dream fades. Erased. Cleanly. Like it never happened at all. You do not get to choose which parts disappear. Your brain makes that decision for you. Silently. Every single night. Without ever asking. Somewhere in that gap, something in your mind committed a quiet crime against your own memory. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how it pulls this off. You will also learn why the smartest, sharpest brains might be doing it the most efficiently of all. That last part is going to change how you think about forgetting completely. Before we go further, notice something simple. You have never once caught yourself falling asleep. Not one time. In your entire life. You have felt tired. You have felt your eyes grow heavy. But the actual hinge point, the exact moment awake becomes gone, has never been witnessed by you. Not once. Try to remember it right now. You cannot. Nobody can. That should feel a lot stranger than it usually does. If that thought is already messing with your head a little, good. Stay with me, because it only gets stranger from here. And if you want more deep dives into how your own mind secretly runs itself, subscribing costs nothing and keeps this kind of research landing in front of you. Here is your first real clue. Neuroscientists actually have a name for this blank spot. They call it sleep onset amnesia. It is not a poetic phrase. It is a documented, measurable event happening inside your skull. And researchers have compared it to something far more violent than simply drifting off. Think about a boxer, knocked out cold in the ring. When he wakes up, he has zero memory of the punch. Not the pain of it, not the second right before it landed. His brain simply refuses to file that memory anywhere. Patients who undergo electroconvulsive therapy show an almost identical gap. Whatever crossed their mind right before treatment, it never gets stored anywhere retrievable. It is as if it never existed. Falling asleep produces a strikingly similar blackout, every night, without a fist or a machine involved. Your consciousness simply switches off mid-sentence, and whatever was happening in that final stretch gets treated the exact same way a blow to the head treats a memory. Gone before it ever had the chance to properly exist. Think about how casually you live with this. If someone deleted an hour of your phone's photos, you would be furious. You would demand answers. But your own brain deletes your last conscious minutes constantly, and you never even notice, let alone complain. That is because you cannot miss something you were never given the chance to register was gone in the first place. The theft is invisible because the victim, the fully aware version of you, was never present to witness it happen. So what is actually going on inside your skull during that window? To understand it, you need to meet a stage of sleep almost nobody ever talks about. It is called N1. It is the very first phase your brain enters each night. It usually only lasts a few short minutes. Most people assume this stage is basically nothing, just a light doze before real sleep properly begins. For decades, most sleep scientists barely studied it at all. It seemed too brief, too fleeting, too hard to catch in a lab. A research team at the Paris Brain Institute decided to look closer anyway, and what they found completely upended that assumption. They studied volunteers as they drifted gradually toward sleep, hooked up to sensitive brain monitors. Some participants stayed fully awake the entire time. Some slipped only briefly into that fragile N1 stage. Others dropped a little deeper, into a stage researchers call N2. Before any of this began, every single participant had carefully memorized the exact locations of 48 different objects on a grid. Afterward, researchers tested how well each group remembered where everything belonged. Here is where the findings get genuinely unsettling for you. The participants who touched only N1 sleep, just a few passing minutes of it, forgot significantly more than everyone else in the study. Roughly 10% of what they had just carefully learned simply vanished. Not scrambled. Not fuzzy around the edges. Gone. The way a deleted file disappears, rather than one that gets misplaced somewhere. The deeper sleepers, the ones who moved further into N2, did not show this same dramatic loss. Something specific to that first fragile stage of sleep was actively erasing information. It was not merely failing to preserve it. Now hold that thought for a second, because your hippocampus is about to enter this story, and it is going to change how you think about memory entirely. Your hippocampus is the structure inside your brain responsible for turning raw experience into lasting memory. Think of it as the librarian working the night shift of your mind. During ordinary wakefulness, it is constantly filing new experiences away for possible future use. But researchers using brain imaging discovered something strange happening right at the edge of N1 sleep. Hippocampal activity actually spikes upward in those final conscious moments, rather than winding down the way you might expect. You would assume a librarian shutting the doors for the night slows their pace, not speeds it up. Instead, right as you lose consciousness, this part of your brain becomes unusually active, almost frantic, according to the imaging data. That single detail should genuinely stop you for a second. If your hippocampus is working harder, not less, in that final window before sleep, why does almost nothing from it get remembered afterward? The answer researchers have landed on is not that your brain simply fails to notice what is happening around you. It is that your brain is actively, deliberately choosing not to keep most of what it notices. Here is a way to picture this that might actually land for you personally. Imagine a mailroom right at closing time, letters still arriving through the slot. Someone inside is still sorting through the pile methodically, but that sorter has already quietly decided most of tonight's letters are getting thrown straight into the bin, not filed away anywhere. From outside the mailroom, the activity looks identical either way, busy hands and constant motion. The real difference only shows up afterward, in what happens to each individual letter. Your hippocampus, in those final seconds before sleep fully takes over, appears to be running exactly this kind of ruthless nightly triage, in real time, on your own conscious life. If you have ever wondered why an anxious, spiraling thought from right before bed sometimes just disappears completely by morning, this triage process may be exactly why that happens, and understanding it is your first real step toward working with your own sleep instead of quietly fighting against it every single night. Older research from the 1990s adds another disturbing layer on top of all this. A team of researchers led by Wyatt tested precisely what people remembered right at the edge of sleep onset. They discovered something researchers now call a memory gate. Information encountered several minutes earlier in the evening tended to stay largely intact afterward, but anything encountered in roughly the final 3 minutes before sleep got wiped almost entirely, without exception. It was as if a literal gate slammed shut between short-term memory and anything considered permanent, and it slammed shut fast, almost violently precise in its timing. You are not gradually forgetting your last few minutes awake, the way fog slowly rolls in. You are hitting a hard, sudden cutoff, timed almost to the second. This is exactly where you should start questioning something you have probably always quietly assumed. You likely think memory works something like a save button. Experience happens, and then it gets automatically saved, the way a document quietly backs itself up in the background while you keep typing. That assumption, it turns out, is simply wrong. Memory actually requires active, ongoing attention just to get properly encoded in the first place. In those drowsy final minutes before sleep, your attention is already dissolving, drifting, losing its grip on the present moment. You are no longer paying full, focused attention to your own thoughts anymore. So your brain was never truly capturing that final material to begin with. It is not always that a good recording got erased afterward. In many of those closing moments, No usable recording was ever actually made in the first place. Stack that finding directly on top of the Paris Brain Institute's N1 data, and a much bigger picture starts to form clearly. Sleep onset is not simply the passive absence of memory. It is an active, two-part process happening every single night. Encoding failure, stacked directly on top of deliberate hippocampal editing, working together in the same tight window. Think about how often you scroll your phone right before turning out the light. A headline here, a message there, a video halfway watched before your thumb goes still. Almost none of that final content is getting properly filed anywhere useful. Your brain was already quietly checking out of the job, even while your eyes stayed technically open and scrolling. That is not a failure of willpower on your part. It is simply biology, doing exactly what biology was built to do at that particular hour. But this raises an obvious, uncomfortable question you are probably already asking. Why would evolution build a brain that deliberately deletes information? Forgetting sounds like the opposite of what a survival machine should want. Here is where the story takes a genuinely surprising turn for you. Researchers studying sleep at the cellular level have found forgetting is not a flaw at all. It appears to be an essential, active function of a healthy, well-functioning brain. A theory called synaptic downscaling suggests your brain accumulates excess connective strength throughout each waking day. Every experience, every thought, every fleeting worry adds tiny amounts of synaptic weight. Left unchecked indefinitely, this buildup would eventually overload your entire neural network. Sleep, according to this theory, exists partly to prune this back down. Other researchers studying REM sleep in mice found something remarkably specific happening. During REM, certain neurons actively trim away newly formed synaptic connections. Not randomly, but selectively, based on which ones matter less for future use. A separate team even identified specific neurons, active only during REM sleep, whose entire job appears to be actively forgetting things. Not storing memories, deleting them, on purpose, as a distinct biological function all its own. Put simply, your brain treats forgetting the same way a sculptor treats marble. The shape that remains only exists because so much material got deliberately removed around it. Without that removal, there would be no shape at all, just an undifferentiated block of noise. Your forgotten minutes before sleep are not a malfunction in this system. They are marble dust, falling away so something more useful can eventually take clear form. If any part of this is reframing how you think about your own forgetful moments tonight, that is exactly the point, and it only gets more interesting from here, so keep watching. Now here comes the part that should completely flip how you feel about all of this, the twist that ties everything together. You would probably assume this nightly deletion is purely a loss for you, a flaw worth fixing if you ever somehow could. But the very same research team that discovered the N1 forgetting effect also ran a closely related experiment on creativity. They gave participants a hidden pattern to discover, buried quietly inside that same object learning task from before. People who briefly touched N1 sleep, that identical fragile stage responsible for all this forgetting, were dramatically more likely to spot the hidden pattern afterward. 83% of N1 sleepers eventually found it. Only 30% of people who stayed fully awake managed the same discovery. Deeper N2 sleepers actually dropped down to just 14%, lower than either other group. Read that gap again for a second, slowly, because it genuinely matters here. The exact same brief brush with N1 sleep that quietly erases your memories is also the specific stage most strongly linked to sudden insight. This is not some unrelated coincidence sitting beside the forgetting effect. Researchers now believe it may actually be the underlying mechanism driving both outcomes at once. Your brain, in that fragile drifting window, is not simply deleting individual facts at random for no reason. It appears to be dissolving specific surface details on purpose, so it can extract the deeper general pattern hiding underneath them. The gist, your conscious, literal mind, was too focused on details to notice while awake. This might explain something people have quietly known for a very long time, long before neuroscience had any name for it. There are old stories about certain inventors and artists deliberately napping in chairs, holding a metal object loosely in one hand. The moment they fell fully asleep, their grip would relax, the object would drop, and the sound would jolt them instantly awake, right at the very edge of that fragile N1 stage. They were not simply resting. They were fishing for exactly the kind of insight this research now measures directly in a lab. In other words, the version of you that cannot remember exactly what happened right before sleep may be the very same version of you capable of suddenly understanding something you had been stuck on for weeks. That flash of insight in the shower, the unexpected solution that seems to arrive out of nowhere, may be sleep-onset amnesia, doing its quieter second job, working in the background, without ever once asking your permission first. If that reframes anything for you tonight, drop a comment about the last time a solution hit you completely out of nowhere, because that thread genuinely shapes what gets covered here next, and I read every single one. So think back to exactly where we started tonight. You, lying in bed, phone finally down, and then nothing at all. That gap was never a malfunction sitting inside your skull. It was never real proof that something in your brain is broken or simply careless. It was your hippocampus, wide awake and working harder than usual, quietly deciding what deserved to survive the night and what did not. Somewhere in that private darkness, between one conscious thought and the very next one, your mind was never simply shutting off like a light switch. It was actively editing you, sorting you, occasionally handing you back an answer you never consciously asked it for in the first place. Tonight, when you put your phone down and the room goes soft and fuzzy at the edges, you will not remember the exact moment it happens. You never have, not once, in your entire life. But now, for the very first time, you will actually understand why. And that quiet blank space in your memory might not be the emptiest part of your entire day after all.